TomHartman.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news. I'll be right back with more of your calls right after this. Did you know that the folks famous for making candy bars also own some of the most popular dog food brands? Yep, that's right. Candy and kibble from the same company. That just doesn't sit right with me. I don't trust these people to know what's best for Blue and Chewy. That's why I love feeding my dogs Dr. Marty's Nature's Blend. It's full of real, wholesome ingredients like turkey, salmon, flax seeds, sweet potatoes, and spinach with none of those sketchy ingredients. Plus, it's freeze-dried, raw, and pantry-safe. No fridge or freezer space needed. It's full of nutrients your dog needs to thrive. And dogs think it's absolutely delicious, even the picky eaters. I can get you up to 54% off your first Nature's Blend order, plus a free full-size pack of Tilly's Treasures, their best-selling beef-liver dog treats. Go to drmartypets.com/Tom, drmartypets.com/THOM, or text Tom to 511-511. Or you can shop in over 2,000 stores nationwide. There's a store locator at their website. All pets are unique. Results can and will vary. Message and data rates may apply. drmartypets.com/Tom.
If something's wrong with your computer, you reboot it. You restore it back to where it needs to be. Today, our country is headed down the wrong track, overwhelmed with joblessness, declining wages, and corporations deciding our elections for starters. This is not the Founding Fathers' vision. It's time we rebooted something bigger than our computers. It's time we rebooted the American dream. We must restore the thriving, prosperous days we once had. And my new book, Rebooting the American Dream, explains exactly what we need to do. Bringing our jobs and manufacturing home, rolling back the Reagan tax cuts, ending corporate personhood, and educating our electorate are part of the simple 11-step plan in rebooting the American dream that we can start today to rebuild our country. Check out Rebooting the American Dream in bookstores everywhere and online at TomHartman.com. We can recover the American dream we lost 30 years ago to Reaganomics and the Reagan-Bush-Clinton-Bush era. We're all in this together. Please check out Rebooting the American Dream by yours truly, Tom Hartman, in bookstores everywhere and online at TomHartman.com.
A gentle breeze blows across your face as you take a refreshing sip of water, appreciating the stillness of another morning fishing on the lake. The distant gurgle of a stream reminds you of days spent playing in the creek, the cool, clear water rushing between your toes. You love this time with nature. The feeling of putting everything on hold to connect with the world around you. Now, imagine it's all gone. No fish, no lake, no water. One of life's most vital resources, irreplaceably depleted. Time is running out to protect fresh water, and without our love, it can and will disappear. It's our choice. Love it or lose it. Help protect our fresh water. Visit World Wildlife Fund at wwf.org/love.
Hey, Tom Hartman here. Why sign up for my program's free daily newsletter over at tom.tv? Well, every morning you receive an email with a complete list of the topics we'll be covering on our weekday program. After the show's over, every afternoon, you'll get what I call Sue's Daily Stack that gives you hot links to every single story and information source that we talked about during the show. Plus, every day while the show is live, you can watch it at tom.tv without cost. That, podcast of the show, a complete library of every subject discussed on previous shows, a place to view it live, it's all at tom.tv. So why sign up to get all this at no cost? Because we want you to join us to help change the world for the better. Despair is not an option. Sign up now at tom.tv, that's THOM.tv, to get all the ammunition you need to win the water cooler wars. Tom.tv, tag You're It. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag You're It. February is Heart Health Month, and I encourage you and those you care about to take steps to improve their heart health. more than half of the population would still benefit from blood pressure support, including me. Superbeats Heart Chews are the #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist recommended way to support healthy blood pressure. And they even promote heart-healthy energy without the stimulants. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Superbeats are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And with over 40,000 5-star reviews and counting, people are raving about Superbeats Heart Chews. Because I want to be healthy. I've been using Superbeats Heart Chews for years. I take them every night. Support your heart health with Superbeats Heart Chews. Get a free 1-month supply of Superbeats Heart Chews and a free full-size bag of turmeric chews valued at $25 with your order by going to tomlovesbeets.com. Yeah, seriously, THOM loves BEETS.com. And I do. I love beets. I love Superbeats. tomlovesbeets.com. We'll be right back. I am right back. It's oh my. James in Spokane. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Hi, y'all. I got to repeat again, justice delayed is justice denied, Tom, and all these things. Justice Roberts, somebody should be reading this stuff for them and reminding them what they're saying and how they say it when it's unprepared text. Is he kidding? Talking about not wanting to set a precedent and affecting the electoral landscape across the country.
Right.
That's what law is about.
Yeah.
That's what law is. That's what you put in code and statute is precedent, and you affirm it by putting it into law.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So, I mean, somebody should read this for him and tell him what he said.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's very oblique.
I agree. And I think that there are, at the very least, Alito and Thomas, perhaps Roberts, but certainly Alito and Thomas very much want Donald Trump back as president, in my opinion. They want that strong man, that authoritarian. They'd be very comfortable with a fascist form of government. The others, the rest of them, I think they're just terrified. But again, this is purely speculation on my part. James, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Oh, hey, Dan, what's on your mind?
I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected a proposal by Hamas for a 3-phase ceasefire where Hamas would release all hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas is seeking an end to the Israeli assault and for all Israeli troops to leave Gaza. On Wednesday, Netanyahu said the war on Gaza would continue and ordered Israeli forces to prepare to attack the southern city of Rafah.
I would like to emphasize again that there is no solution other than total victory.
At a news conference yesterday, released hostages pleaded with Netanyahu to prioritize the release of remaining captives in Gaza. This is Adina Moshe, a 72-year-old grandmother who'd been held hostage in Gaza for 49 days.
I'm very afraid that if you continue on this path to dismantle Hamas, there will be no more hostages to release.
Despite Netanyahu's vow to continue the assault on Gaza, truce negotiations are continuing. A Hamas delegation is in Cairo today for talks with mediators from Egypt and Qatar. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has wrapped up his Middle East trip after visiting Israel and the occupied West Bank, where he was met by Palestinian protesters. Health officials in Gaza say Israeli attacks since October 7th have now brought the death toll to nearly 28,000. This comes as the UN is warning the risk of famine in Gaza is, quote, increasing by the day. The Palestine Red Crescent Society says they still have no news about 6-year-old Hind and 2 of the group's rescue workers who disappeared 10 days ago while attempting to reach her. The child was last heard from while in a car which came under attack by Israeli fire. 6 of her relatives were killed while in the vehicle. Hind's mother spoke out this week, imploring international actors to help locate her missing child.
Every second I wait for my daughter. If we hear an ambulance, we think it's Hind. If we hear people coming over, we think it's Hind. Every crash, every gunshot, every bombing, every missile I hear, I think if it's happening next to my daughter, or directly to her, or to the medics that went to her.
Earlier today, the Palestine Red Crescent Society said another member of its rescue team, Mohammed al-Omari, was killed, bringing the total number of its aid workers killed by Israel's attacks to 12. Meanwhile, the family of a Palestinian-American woman is calling on U.S. officials to help free Samahir Ismail after she was forcibly taken from her home by Israeli soldiers in the occupied West Bank in the middle of the night Monday. Ismail is a resident of Louisiana. Her Congress member, Troy Carter, said Tuesday he's contacted the U.S. Embassy and the State Department in hopes of securing her release. In news from Iraq, the United States has assassinated a senior commander of Kataib Hezbollah militia. A U.S. drone attack in Baghdad reportedly killed Abu Bakr al-Sadi and 2 other members of the Iran-aligned group, which the U.S. believes was involved in the recent drone strike on a base in Jordan that killed 3 American troops. The government of Iraq condemned the U.S. drone strike as a, quote, clear aggression and violation of Iraqi sovereignty. Meanwhile, Israel attacked the Syrian city of Homs on Tuesday. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the attack killed 10 people, including at least 6 civilians. In other news from the region, Saudi Arabia has reaffirmed it will not establish diplomatic relations with Israel until an independent Palestinian state is recognized. Protests against the war are continuing throughout the U.S. Here in New York, at least 100 Jewish American activists and their allies were arrested Wednesday as they blockaded a road on President Biden's motorcade route as he attended fundraisers. In Chicago, 33 people were arrested as they blocked entrances to the Woodward manufacturing plant, which makes military equipment that has been used by Israel in Palestine. In California, Code Pink and other activists blocked an entrance to the Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield.
It's our responsibility when our government is so horrendously breaking international laws to step up and say no. Not in our name, not with our tax dollars. No weapons to Israel.
Code Pink activists who were arrested during a previous action at the Travis base will be arraigned later this month. The Senate adjourned Wednesday after failing to advance the contentious $118 billion border package. Republicans, who demanded the hardline immigration measure in exchange for funding for Ukraine and Israel, U-turned on the bill after Donald Trump directed them to reject it. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer slammed Republicans and Trump for sowing chaos in legislative business.
There's one other person besides Donald Trump who is rooting for chaos in the Senate. It is Vladimir Putin. If we fail in this moment, if we abandon our friends in Ukraine to Vladimir Putin, history will cast a shameful and permanent shadow on senators who block funding. It is a matter of the highest national urgency that we get this right.
Schumer said he would call a separate vote today on military funding for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan without any border provisions. As the $118 billion border bill failed Wednesday, more than 800 faith leaders and groups called on Congress to pivot to a more humane immigration package, quote, that respects the sacred dignity of all people.
Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created
equal to the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there? It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
To understand how we got here, you have to start with the legal word salad that is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Quote, no person shall hold any office who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. English translation, if you took an oath and you break that oath by engaging in an insurrection, then you don't get to hold public office in the future, a view that's been embraced by some leading conservative legal voices.
It's not President Joe Biden It's not the Democrats. It's not the anti-Trumpers. It's the Constitution of the United States.
The 14th Amendment's framers wanted to make sure that after the Civil War, ex-Confederate leaders wouldn't get voted back into office. But the text that went into effect in 1868 raises a bunch of tricky questions now at the heart of the legal fight in 2023. Like, is the president an officer of the United States? If so, why not say so? Did Trump engage in an insurrection or rebellion, even if he didn't break into the Capitol himself? And who exactly is supposed to enforce this part of the Constitution anyway? Congress or the courts? In the wave of lawsuits to ban Trump from the ballot, most courts have dodged these questions or ruled in his favor until Colorado, where the state's highest court found him ineligible for office. The case now on the U.S. Supreme Court's docket, where the ultimate result for Colorado and the rest of the country is far from clear-cut.
Okay, so we had the argument. We had oral this morning. How you feeling? You good? We did. We had 2 hours of oral is what it was. Wow, I just lockjaw, baby. But I don't think the Supreme Court was even slightly interested in the question before it. Really, I don't. And I told you yesterday that they wouldn't be interested in the question before it, and that they would never decide whether or not Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection or he didn't, because the Supreme Court is not a trier of fact court. In fact, most courts don't try facts, juries do. That's what we are. When we're called to jury duty, the duty is to try the facts and see if the facts hold water. Does it hold water? No. Positive traction. See what I mean? So the Supreme Court decided, I'm sure the day that it took this case, that it would punt, okay? And that it would punt to some other portion of the government, some other branch, some other, you can't punt to the executive branch, right? Couldn't do that. No. Could you punt to the states? Well, you sort of kind of could, except then in our federalist system, you could get different results in different states. And therefore, the federal choices for president, which is a federal office, would not be universally available. Maybe in California, Donald Trump's name would not be available. Or maybe in Nevada, they would rig an election. They would rig it like they did for today. Today is a caucus in Nevada. And the only candidate that you can vote for in a GOP caucus in Nevada today is Donald Trump. You can't vote for Nikki Haley. She was in a primary yesterday, and she lost to none of the above. Which, by the way, I have a little factoid for those of you who really care about facts, like really, really care about them. So because she didn't lose to a person, she lost to an idea, none of the above. She actually could say she won the primary. Yeah, she can. I wouldn't if I were her, though, because, none of the above got, 61% of the vote to her 30. Yeah, it wasn't a good deal. Wasn't a good number. Wasn't, great rating. Wasn't, like a real rousing show of support. Nope, not at all. But today is the caucuses in Nevada, and Donald Trump is the only person that you could vote for. So he was listening to the Supreme Court argument this morning, and, people didn't want to go to him because they knew he was going to tell lies like right off the top, and he did. And it was so funny. I mean, just watching, the commercial media, corporate media decide whether or not he was campaigning or whether or not he was, commenting on the arguments he just heard by virtue of his lawyer making his argument to the Supreme Court justices. And he just could not stay on topic. He just went crazy. And he started saying that he was going to go to the caucuses in Nevada. And, he was polling at above 90%, he said. Almost 99% on polling. He goes, very strong support for me in Nevada. Without telling people that he's the only person that you could vote for today in Nevada at the caucuses. Anyway, so they cut away. And then they had to go back because they were talking in Jake Tapper's ear, and they're going, listen, I think you got to go back because now he's commenting on the case. So they went, all right. And he was talking to like a Supreme Court expert, Joan Biskupik at the Supreme Court, who was inside the court, giving us the, 411 and what went on in the court, what the feeling was, and what did, all these mega lawyers who were there to listen to this argument, what did they think, and did you talk to them, and what did they say? What's the likelihood that they would find? Where do you think they're going to punt it to? Did they want an off-ramp? Were they looking for the exits? Like what was going on? And she was informing me, about, and millions of others, about what was really going on in that courtroom. And they had to go back to Donald Trump. They went back to him. And he started with his word salad and started making crap up again. And they were like, okay, we got to go. So it was painful, put it this way. All around. Why? It was painful because the Supreme Court, who has like zero problem taking away my right to choose, zero problem with my right to privacy, taking it away, zero problem with taking away people's voting rights or protections for their voting rights, or for their protection to have their votes be just as powerful as the next guy, meaning gerrymandering issues, maps. They have no problem. The federal court has no problem weighing in on state maps. Okay, no problem at all. But on this one, this was too hard for them. This was too difficult. This was bizarre. This was not meant for us. Oh, no. So, I was listening to other people, comment before, trying to, put their bets down about what would happen. And, it's never a good idea to bet on this Supreme Court because they're bad crap. And some of them are on the take. And others aren't. So, the ones on, like Clarence, his wife. I mean, this is an amazing stat. I don't know how many people gave this to or told you or reminded you today. But Clarence Thomas did not recuse himself from this. And isn't that fascinating, considering his wife actually worked to organize the Stop the Steal rally that he weaponized and turned into a missile aimed at the Capitol. I mean, it's an amazing thing to watch this Supreme Court operate. And the sooner we actually, get rid of or see, the power of a Clarence Thomas diminished by either expanding a court, which is a second-term thing, not a first-term thing, the better off we are. Because it was perfectly obvious today. They are not going to make a consequential decision about a man who has no care, no concern, no clue about what protecting the Constitution requires of him. Not a clue. And they ended up so down in the weeds, they started debating like, well, this was an insurrection, right? We're not wrong about that. Oh, no, you're wrong about that. It wasn't an insurrection. No, it wasn't. But didn't you concede that it was in your... No, we did not. No, we didn't concede jack crap. No.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
The Bob Cesca Show.
Bob Cesca. For the first time in a long time, we have breaking news that occurs before the show. It's an amazing thing. I can't believe it.
I love when that happens, and good news at that.
You know what? All those bribes have been paying to the D.C. Circuit.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, I said, please hand down your ruling before we do the show. Thank you very much. Well, the D.C. Circuit has unanimously ruled that presidential immunity does not exist. No. But
this is a federal appeals court, this circuit court, and we've been waiting a little longer than we expected for this ruling. But this is the decision that the Supreme Court didn't want to make without it going through an appeals court first. Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, had asked the court, can I leapfrog the appeals court because this is so pressing. You may remember him saying he needed an immediate ruling on this from the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, they don't like to be told what to do, so they balked at that, and I don't think they wanted to or were ready to make the decision, so they kicked it back down to the appeals court where it would have gone anyway.
Yeah.
It took longer than it should have, but the ruling is down, and so now the question is, what happens now? Trump naturally will appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes.
Will they take the case? They've already kicked it out once, indicating to me they really didn't want to make this decision.
Yeah.
Or will they just not rule, which would leave the lower court ruling standing?
Well, the speculation for people like Allison Gill and Andrew Weissman and so forth was
Good
that
people, yeah.
Yes, the D.C. Circuit would be so thorough in their ruling that the Supremes would look at it and go, you know what, they got it covered. So that's the idea, and that's my hope here, is that even though Donald Trump is absolutely going to appeal this to the Supreme Court level, that the Supremes will deny him that opportunity and say, well, no, we're going to let that decision stand.
Bob Cesca.
It's the Bob Cesca Show. New episodes every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everywhere you get your podcasts, and at bobcescashow.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day copper miners in Butte, Montana went out on strike. Mine owners announced a $1 a day wage cut when copper prices slumped in the financial markets. Swayed by the power of the Seattle General Strike then in progress, miners associated with the Industrial Workers of the World and the Metal Mine Workers Union Local 800 formed their own Soldiers, Sailors, and Workers Council. They issued a call for a general strike. For days, area trade unionists honored picket lines, left their jobs, and held meetings to debate joining a general strike. The streetcar workers shut down public transportation for 5 days. Soldiers returning from the war helped to man the picket lines. The labor paper Butte Daily Bulletin reported the post-war economy had left returning war heroes penniless and working in dangerous mines. While solidarity was unanimous among workers, their unions had yet to pass formal resolutions. Immediately, Montana's Governor Sam V. Stewart called in the 44th Infantry to crush the strike. Infantrymen bayoneted 9 strikers when they tried to stop the anti-labor Butte Daily Post from being distributed. Spirits were high by the end of the first week as official voting began. Then the streetcar men went back to work, citing no grievances with their employer. Then the engineers followed. Finally, the IBEW caved. They worried the engineers would take their jobs as they had done in the 1917 strike. The IWW and Local 800 called off the strike, fearing continuation would be fatal. Though most of the troops were soon withdrawn, one company stayed to ensure labor peace at the local water and electric works. Butte would remain under federal military occupation until the end of 1920. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
There's a very strong argument. And remember, this argument did not come from liberals. They didn't come from people, who already are against, Trump at all. They came from conservative originalists, as they like to call themselves, law professors, lawyers, who basically said, if you read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, it's pretty clear that he should not be permitted to run for president. I think the argument is very strongly on their side. Now, what's the remedy? Is the remedy for the Supreme Court to say, no, he can't be on the ballot? Or is the remedy for the court to say, this very well can apply constitutionally, but it's up to the states to make the determination? Because remember, states in our federalist system actually run elections. And I think that might be where the court ends up.
Yeah, I don't. Sorry, no offense, Hill. No offense. I know you're not a fan of mine, but I am a fan of yours in a weird way. In a very weird way. But no offense. It's not going to be left to the states. And we know that by the argument today that was made. The argument is, well, yes, we're in a federalist system and, we do have a 10th Amendment and all the things that aren't, enumerated here go to the states and the states can do. And elections are a 50-state thing. There's no question. But in this particular instance, they weren't willing to actually observe their chosen brand of governance, federalism. They weren't able to bring themselves to admit that Colorado, as one of 50 states, that their Supreme Court made a ruling and that their Supreme Court found that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection and should not be included in the eligible list of people who can run for president on their particular ballot. Because Colorado is going to run its own election this year, the same way Nevada is, rigging their election for Donald Trump today. States can do that. You can also sue, saying they deprived you of your rights. But that's in a whole other can of worms, okay? But in this particular instance, you can hear that Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, was not comfortable leaving it to the states because he felt you could get different results in different states. Well, duh. That's what our system allows. But he's not willing to go there. He's not willing to say, I'm a federalist, okay? And I do believe that, every state can choose the manner in which it selects its electors, except for this issue. And here's how you know, okay? And then he downshifted into wondering aloud, what would that look like if Donald Trump wasn't on the ballot in Colorado, but was on the ballot in Florida, and wasn't on the ballot in New York and California, but was on the ballot in Wyoming, and Montana. Like, what would that look like? How could I live? How could I do it, right? And then downshifted into and was it an insurrection? Was it? I don't know.
What do you do with what would seem to me to be plain consequences of your position? If Colorado's position is upheld, surely there will be disqualification proceedings on the other side, and some of those will succeed. Some of them will have different standards of proof. Some of them will have different rules about evidence. Maybe the Senate report won't be accepted in others because it's hearsay. Maybe it's beyond a reasonable doubt, whatever. In very quick order, I would expect, although my predictions have never been correct, I would expect that a goodly number of states will say, whoever the Democratic candidate is, you're off the ballot, and others, for the Republican candidate, you're off the ballot, and it'll come down to just a handful of states that are going to decide the presidential election. That's a pretty daunting consequence.
Let me unconfuse you, Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court Roberts. On what basis would you be taking a Democrat off the ballot? Did they participate in it? This is a very specific, question in front of you. This is a very specific case about a very specific dereliction of duty, about a very specific, call to action, about a very specific need to stop an official proceeding of Congress, which carries with it a 20-year penalty, under our law for doing that. And that's exactly what this violence was supposed to do. The violence was in service of stopping the certification of the Electoral College ballots, right? And what was that going to accomplish? Well, that would have left a president who lost an election in power, therefore overthrowing our system of government and depriving millions of Americans of their vote. That's the question in front of you. He's sitting there saying, but, it could happen on the other side. What other side? What is it, very fine people on both sides thing? What is this? I don't even know why people skipped over this portion and went straight to the question of whether or not this was an insurrection, and that's what they're playing today for you. But that was very important, that he suggested, even for a brief brain fart moment, that it could happen. The Democrats would be removed from the ballot in Wyoming. For what? For what insurrection? For what violation of, the law? For what violation of the Constitution? Honestly, I honestly, you think these people are supposed to be the smartest people in the room. And when it comes to like a common sense argument, they just get all bamboozled by their own brilliance. The light is so bright they can't see anything. Really? What are you suggesting that Democrats be removed from the ballot for that will create this mass chaos that you, don't want to predict because you're always wrong? Gee, I wonder why. So there was that, and then the lawyer for Colorado, who I thought did a great job. I really did. I mean, he had never argued in front of the Supreme Court before in his life. He was very historically accurate. He had case law on the tip of his tongue, at his fingertips. He understood what precedent was on these very specific issues. He understood cases from 1888, 1868, which was, the year that the 14th Amendment was ratified. I mean, he was fabulous. He was really good. And so he answered his stupid question.
Well, certainly, Your Honor, the fact that there are potential frivolous applications of a constitutional provision isn't a reason.
Well, no, hold on. I mean, you might think they're frivolous, but probably the people who are bringing them may not think they're frivolous.
Any assertion that a Democratic candidate for president who would be the Democratic nominee for president engaged in an insurrection is cuckoo. Therefore, frivolous. Well, it may not seem to them to be Are you kidding me? Of course it would. Any thinking human being would be able to delineate between January 6th, 2021, the violence, the beatings, the insurrection, the hunting for people to kill, and Biden.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed. Happy Immunity Day to those who celebrate, and I assume you do.
I do. I was going to wear my immunity cloak.
It's invisible, much like Trump's. So, Allison, talk to us. You were so good on all these details. I mean, you were saying, obviously, this is what we expected, legal experts, but it's also exactly what you hoped for. Tell us why. You were starting to, before we came on a little bit.
Well, as my dream scenario, and I've talked to you about this, I've talked to everybody on my podcast about this, was that Jack would go to the Supreme Court, leapfrog over the D.C. Circuit. Supreme Court would say no. D.C. Circuit would hear it. D.C. Circuit would say no immunity, give him a very short period of time to petition the Supreme Court. And that's where we are now.
Yeah.
And now I hope that the Supreme Court does not issue a stay, does not grant cert, and will not hear this case. Because that means that the D.C. proceedings will resume this Monday.
Right.
That's fast. Now, Supreme Court could grant a stay, could give a decision. They would have a decision out by June, which would push the trial back quite a bit. But this is a solid, very solid decision on the merits. They decided and agreed that they did have jurisdiction, which was what I thought might take them so long. And so they've come to the conclusion that they have jurisdiction. They made a decision on the merits. It's per curiam, which means they all are in agreement. It's unanimous. This will be very difficult for the Supreme Court to try to intervene on.
We are just in a legal Wild West, aren't we? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah, we've never been in this position before because we've never had such a criminally culpable former president. So, I think we've run out of adjectives.
Yeah.
And we need, the thesaurus is out of adjectives for unprecedented.
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
What was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do.
I say it's freedom of many things. When people proudly had their Confederate flags, they're not talking about racism. They love their flag. It represents the South.
I knew half of South Carolinians saw the Confederate flag as heritage and tradition.
What do you want me to say about slavery? Next question.
This plotline could have come from one of Charles Dickens' novels about upper-class depravity. Miserly governors refused to provide gruel for poverty-stricken ragamuffins. Unfortunately, this is not a novel, but modern-day reality, taking place in 15 states where right-wing office holders have scorned a federal program to provide food this summer for millions of children mired in poverty. No, bark these political ideologues seeking to punish poverty. They piously demonize public aid, even for hungry children. This program hardly lavishes luxury dining on anyone, offering only $40 per child in groceries. Not for one meal or even a week, but $40 a month, about $1.30 a day. Feast on that. Yet the politicos...
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Well, certainly, Your Honor, the fact that there are potential frivolous applications of a constitutional provision isn't a reason...
Well, no, hold on. I mean, you might think they're frivolous, but probably the people who are bringing them may not think they're frivolous. Insurrection is a broad term, and if there's some debate about it, I suppose that will go into the decision, and then eventually we would be deciding whether there was an insurrection when one president did something as opposed to when somebody else did something else. And what do? Do we wait until near the time of counting the ballots and sort of go through which states are valid and which states aren't?
There's a reason Section 3 has been dormant for 150 years, and it's because we haven't seen anything like January 6th. Since Reconstruction. Insurrection against the Constitution is something extraordinary.
It seems to me you're avoiding the question, which is other states may have different views about what constitutes insurrection. And now you're saying, well, it's all right because somebody, presumably us, are going to decide, well, they said they thought that was an insurrection, but they were wrong. And maybe they thought it was right. And we'd have to develop rules for what constitutes an insurrection.
You have a law.
Yes, Your Honor. Just like this court interprets other constitutional provisions, this court can make clear that an insurrection against the Constitution is something extraordinary. And in particular, it really requires a concerted group effort to resist through violence, not some ordinary application of state or federal law, but the functions mandated by the Constitution.
On your point that it's been dormant for 155 years, I think the other side would say the reason for that is Chief Justice Chase's opinion in 1869 in Griffin's case to start, which says that Congress has the authority here, not the states. That's followed up by the Enforcement Act of 1870, in which Congress acts upon that understanding, which is followed, and there's no history contrary in that period, as Justice Thomas pointed out. There's no history contrary in all the years leading up to this of states exercising such authority. I think the reason it's been dormant is because there's been a settled understanding that Chief Justice Chase, even if not right in every detail, was essentially right, and the branches of the government have acted under that settled understanding for 155 years, and Congress can change that. And Congress does have Section 2383, of course, the Insurrection Act criminal statute, but Congress could change it, but they have not in the 155 years in relevant respects for what you want here today, at least.
No, Justice Kavanaugh. The reason why it's been dormant is because by 1876, essentially all former Confederates had received amnesty. We haven't seen anything like an insurrection since then.
These justices, they were so shamed by a guy who's never even argued in front of them before, and it was. I love that he had the courage of his convictions, that he understood exactly what was being said to him as an excuse to not kick an insurrectionist leading, aid and comfort to the insurrectionist president who sat on his giant orange ass for 3 hours and let the peaceful protesters, according to Trump, just trash the place. Didn't do jack crap to even protect his own minions, who he says were peaceful. Well, there were some people up there that if they weren't part of your minions, they weren't very peaceful. Why didn't you help them out? How come you didn't do jack? How come you didn't save him? How come you didn't, go and give him National Guard cover? How come you didn't, disarm the people in the trees that brought, 75 of these guys, we find out later, 75 of them had weapons. And we didn't know that till the January 6th hearings. And then all of a sudden you could see some of the people were sitting up in trees, carrying their weapons. And a year later, after January 6th, you had 75 people answer to weapons charges in the affirmative. Yeah, I had a gun. You had people with entire trucks full of, guns. But, this could happen to a Democrat. You could just willingly. And then he says to him, there was this crazy argument made about, well, they could kick somebody off the ballot after somebody voted. After a state voted, after the election day. And he's like, are you kidding me? I do think we have protections. But okay, let's change it then. Let's just change it. It was very...
If this court affirms, this court can write an opinion that emphasizes how extraordinary insurrection against the Constitution is, and how rare that is, because it requires an assault not just on the application of law, but on constitutionally mandated functions themselves, like we saw on January 6th, a coordinated attempt to disrupt a function mandated by the 12th Amendment and essential to constitutional transfer.
Well, let me ask you a question about whether the power that you've described as plenary really is plenary. Suppose that the outcome of an election for president comes down to the vote of a single state, how the electors of the vote of a single state are going to vote. And suppose that candidate A gets a majority of the votes in that state, but the legislature really doesn't like candidate A, thinks candidate A is an insurrectionist, so the legislature then passes a law ordering its electors to vote for the other candidate. Do you think the state has that power?
I think there may be principles that come into play in terms of after the people have voted, that the state can't change the rules midstream. I'm not sure, because I'm not aware of this court addressing it. And certainly, as
let's change it so that it's not after the election. It's 3 days before the election, based on the fact that the polls in that state look bad.
Oh, good Lord!
Can they do it?
I think they probably could under this court's decision in Chafalo, where this court emphasized that for much of American history, state legislatures picked their own electors and assigned their own electors themselves. But of course, that would be much more extraordinary than what we have here, which is simple application of normal state ballot access principles to say that we're only going to put on the ballot an individual who is qualified to assume the office.
Can I ask?
No. Shut up now. I mean, obviously, the court that this Mr. Murray has to argue in front of believes in the independent legislature theory, and so he's like, well, this court would let states do just about anything. This court would, ex post facto, you could go back and you could say he didn't win, even though he did win, or okay, you want to make it, based on polling that you're going to remove some. We're talking about an extraordinary, rare insurrection on the United States Capitol that actually happened, not hypothetical, not something in your imagination that could happen or might happen, or we're talking about something that did happen, where 1,000 people have gone to jail for participating in it at the behest of Orange Jesus, who told them to fight like hell or they won't have a country anymore. But fight like hell peacefully, right? Yeah. I mean, they just weren't willing. And so this is how you know that they just aren't willing to enforce the Constitution on Donald Trump. They're just not. They're not going to do it. Kavanaugh stumbled into the answer. He told it to you right there. The answer is Congress. They are going to punt to Congress. They are going to say that this constitutionally mandated insurrection is being barred from the ballot because he participated in something that he took an oath to never do, should not be given the oath again, and hope for better things next time. Let Congress deal with it.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes RandiRhodes.com.
Decades of leadership, a lifetime of experience, and rock-solid determination to rebuild America. Joe Biden's plan for America's economic comeback is working. The highest job growth in the world. Inflation coming down faster than any other major nation. The prices families pay for everything from gas to groceries falling fast. Hope and optimism coming back. His tireless work to build a stronger America means we're respected again. And a respected America is a safer America. Joe Biden's years have taught him leadership, wisdom, toughness, how to ignore the noise and focus on the people. He's a president for every American, making the hard decisions with compassion, heart, and respect. That's Joe Biden, America's president. Something is happening in American politics. For decades, Republicans called themselves the party of strength in foreign policy. Today, the Republican Party attacks our military.
Some of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life.
And cozies up to our enemies.
Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart.
Republican senators are blocking key military appointments, making America less safe.
This sweeping hold is undermining America's military readiness.
Republicans are helping Vladimir Putin by calling for the end of military aid to the brave Ukrainians.
Under Republican, not another penny will go to Ukraine.
Today, President Joe Biden is the voice of a strong America.
Let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back.
This is an American president.
We cannot and will not let terrorists like Hamas, tyrants like Putin win.
President Joe Biden, America's president.
Hey, Donald, we noticed something. More and more people are saying it. You're weak. You seem unsteady. You need help getting around. And wow.
Really an ominous country, and you deserve.
Are you sure you don't have dementia?
It runs in the family.
Have you had a real doctor check you out? You keep confusing things.
And we did with Obama. We won an election.
Getting the facts wrong.
We just left pleasure for paradise.
People laugh about it, about you, even your own people behind your back. You're winning the primary, but losing your power, your strength, your manhood. Face it, Donald. You're just projecting when you call Joe Biden old. He's stronger than you, fitter than you, smarter than you, a better man and a better president. Anyone can see it. And when you lay there at night, alone, you know we're right. You're falling apart, Donald, breaking down, right in front of our eyes.
God bless the United States. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
You can do anything. Grab him by the pussy.
He's not a war hero. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voting. Very fine people, on both sides. I don't know what I said. I don't remember. I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Whether you're listening to Leslie Marshall each Tuesday through Friday or Brad Bannon each Monday, you can hear them from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on the Progressive Voices Network. Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
The director of the United Steelworkers District 4, Dave Wasura. Unions give workers a voice in shaping their communities, and that includes increased civic engagement, more focused political power for working families. It's a win-win-win all around because you have, the wages. Obviously, you're improving the surrounding community because there's job creation. There are wages that are increased, not just at the union, but also the non-union facilities because they raise the bar. But then there's more civic engagement, and then there's more power among the community with their elected officials, or to change who their elected officials are to benefit them. And that all comes back to, again, the unions and the unions fighting for their workers, and it has that rippling effect, a positive rippling effect.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, 47 after. Kathy in New Mexico.
Yeah, Randy, I just wanted to say I have the same opinion that you did. It drove me crazy when they brought up the point of, they can take off a Democrat or take a Democrat off. And it was like they were talking as if it were nothing. I mean, it was the other side didn't commit what Donald Trump had tried. So it just drove me crazy that wasn't brought up.
And they are the court, and they're sitting there pretending that you could just say, oh, you're off the ballot, give no reason, or say, in my mind, in my head, I saw you in an insurrection-ish
That's what was driving me crazy, yeah.
And that there would be no judicial review?
Exactly.
What world are they operating in? MAGA world? Is this, is this Alice in Wonderland for real, where the court doesn't understand that there are courts?
And can you tell me what they mean by officer, like when they bring that word up? It doesn't make sense to me because it seems like that's not common sense. What else would it be?
He's the chief law enforcement officer. That is so amazing. And so what they're pretending not to know is that he's the chief law enforcement officer.
Well, yeah, that's what I didn't get, but anyway, it's very interesting. So what do you think?
What do I think? I think they're going to say that this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is not, and they'll use this word that'll just, screw with all of us. It's not self-executing.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll all sit there and go, oh, it's not self-executing. Oh, what?
Yeah.
Right.
But it was very interesting. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. And so they'll say, no, it just doesn't, just because your eyes, your ears, the indictments, the guilty verdicts, the actual adjudication of Proud Boys and of Oath Keepers and the gun violation and all of the things that, the 1,000 people pled guilty to, that, we can't do anything about that. That has to be wiped out of your memory. Because even though you saw it, even though you read these indictments, even though you read the jury verdicts, even though you know the jury verdicts, even though you know what you saw in the January 6th hearings, even though there was video of people in trees with guns, even though you know that Donald Trump said you got to fight like hell, even though you know he said, and I'm going to walk down there with you, even though you know what was going on at the White House during the insurrection, and he was watching it on TV and happy to see it, even though you know that, you have to forget that you know that. Because it's not self-executing. What? And they're going to say Congress has to enforce it. The courts can't enforce it. Congress has to enforce it. Now, yesterday, I had hoped, and I knew they wouldn't. I knew they wouldn't decide whether or not Donald Trump participated in an insurrection vote. But I really hoped that their eyes would not fail them. But, the mere fact, you want to know what tea leaves you can read when you're looking at these situations, just know that Clarence Thomas's wife actually helped organize the Stop the Steal rally, which she actually attended and then left early. I guess she smelled the violence or knew what the plan was, because Ginny left and her husband did not recuse himself today. That's a leaf in the tea that you could read. And knowing that that's a leaf in the tea that you could read, and having read it, it should have clued you in on the fact that they were going to do nothing. Nothing about it. Now, March 4th is Super Tuesday, okay? And Colorado, which is the state that has the ability to do this under their own laws, because every state has their own election laws, They do. It's just a fact. And the Supreme Court knows that. So bizarre that they're pretending they don't know what they know. I don't. Yeah, I'm not going to say I don't know why, because I do know why. They don't want to get involved. They really don't. And this is also playing into the tea leaf that I read when I tell you that I don't think they're going to take the immunity, the absolute immunity case at all, because the D.C. Court of Appeals that released that very tight, bright opinion actually put a deadline on Monday for Donald Trump to either choose door number 1 or door number 2. Door number 1, you get to have the whole D.C. Court of Appeals hear your case. But the clock keeps ticking, meaning Judge Chutkan can go about her business while you give oral arguments and we take the time to weigh your case to the whole court. And we'll probably come up with the same conclusion, and your lawyer can tell you that. Because there's nothing in law that says that you have absolute immunity or immunity of any sort once you're not president. Or B, take door number 2 and ask the Supreme Court to hear your case. I think they're going to take door number 2 on Monday, and the Supreme Court is going to say, not in the mood for you. And you could tell by their reluctance to weigh in on what was a violent, violent day in an attempt to stop the certification of a free and fair election in order to keep a man who did not win a presidential election in the office of president. I mean, you would think we were in, some third world country when I say those things, but we all saw it. They saw it too. Clarence lived it in real time with Ginny. Probably watched it on TV when she came home. It's so unbelievable. And they refuse to use any of their awesome powers to hold Donald Trump accountable in Colorado, where Colorado obviously doesn't want him on their ballot because their laws require that they don't allow him, because he did engage in a violent attempt to hold onto his office by stopping a constitutionally mandated congressional proceeding. It's just, that is what it is. Steve in Virginia.
Oh, yeah. It's the first time I've ever called you.
Oh, hi.
But I listened to some of the Supreme Court hearings today, and I really think they're just going to pass the buck.
Yeah, me too.
And I think go ahead and let's have an election. If by some fluke Donald Trump actually wins, then we can invoke the 14th Amendment and see if he can pass the House and the Senate with 2/3 of the vote.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that's where they kind of left it. And it's very sad because that means another January 6th. You understand that, and I understand that. And there's just the idea that they are so lame and so impotent and so insecure and so scared and so, bought up and everything else. That they,
bought off, yes.
Yeah, that they refuse to do what is constitutionally their role to do, and that is to prevent an insurrectionist from being on a ballot.
How could they stop the House and the Senate from stopping the election? Because Donald Trump is clearly an insurrectionist.
Yeah.
He aided and abetted the insurrectionists.
Yeah.
And wants to pardon them if he gets back in power.
Right.
It's like, we can't allow this to happen.
I agree. I mean, I think most thinking people in this country, like a very large majority of people in this country, agree with you. But some people are still waiting for some court to say some damn thing about his criminal behavior. And so far, we're just waiting. That's the problem.
Well, if he gets thumped in a third election, he lost that first one too, but stole that one.
The first
and he's
one,
been crying. He's been crying about stealing the second one ever since.
I don't think he stole the first one. I think Russia interfered in the manipulation of information in the first one. That they were definitely playing around on Facebook when that was a thing.
I'm getting really tired of the Electoral College determining elections because the majority of the people don't want Trump.
True that.
Well, thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. That's true. The majority of the people never wanted Donald Trump, but we don't use the majority vote. I get your feeling about the Electoral College. I'm sick of it too. I really am. I mean, most countries that are democratic, that function, a majority vote, there you go. Not here. Oh, no, not here. And, it's so interesting. They're going, well, why should one state be able to decide who the president is and who the president isn't? Well, that's the way our system is. It's always one state. I mean, the last election, we were all sitting there waiting for Arizona. Very few people remember that. Prior 2000, everybody was waiting for Florida. Florida. Remember Tim Russer, God rest his soul? Florida on the whiteboard. I mean, it's always one state. It's always because we have an electoral college, and it has nothing to do with the majority of Americans. If it were a majority of Americans that made you president, Hillary Clinton would be president. She would still be president. She would be concluding her second term as the first woman president of the United States of America, if majority rules were majority rules. But they're not because of the Electoral College, and I agree. But, you know, this happens every 4 years. I try and talk about it in the first year of a presidency, in the second year of a presidency. I try and talk about the Electoral College. And, okay, we're done with the big election. Let's talk about reforming the way we choose. Never happens. It doesn't get done. They go the other way. Let's take away voting rights. Let's do that.
Clear for takeoff.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken, and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WAC, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WAC, more than 3,000 people died of drug overdoses in Los Angeles County alone in 2022. And last October, Hollywood actor Matthew Perry of Friends fame became one of the latest overdose victims when he accidentally died of acute effects of ketamine at his Los Angeles home. Perry's story reminds us that no one is immune to drug overdoses. But who is most vulnerable in LA County, and what can be done about it? To find out, we spoke to Nyabinghi Kuti, director of the LA Harm Reduction Network, which aims to expand and enhance access to substance use disorder treatment for LA County and especially Skid Row. So you've said in the past that Black residents on Skid Row are facing a humanitarian crisis related to substance use disorder. What are you seeing and hearing from these residents?
Well, what I'm hearing is a lack of residential beds there, and the issue of quality of treatment that I mentioned. Many people that have died from overdoses have been in treatment multiple times. You know, if you listen to people like Perry and other celebrities that have overdosed and died, they've been in treatment before, and sometimes over 10 times. So that makes you wonder, well, why isn't treatment working?
Get the full Code WAC story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
The science is clear. Soot pollution is one of the most dangerous forms of air pollution.
EPA cracks down on deadly type of air pollution. January 2024 was the hottest January ever recorded on planet Earth. Plus,
scientists say that climate change is creating hurricanes so strong they're literally off the charts.
Hurricanes are getting so intense, scientists propose a Category 6.
About time. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
These bizarre weather emergencies are just going to keep happening. We all know the cause. Al Gore warned us about this, and it's getting worse every year, so I'll just say it. The witch's curse.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I think the witch's curse had its mitts around us down here in Southern California, but the good news is I think the unceasing rain over the past few days is finally done?
Yes, it appears to be so.
We'll see. What do you got for us today?
Well, despite the United States seeing extreme cold last month, globally, January 2024 was the warmest January ever recorded since record-keeping began in the mid-1800s. That's according to preliminary data from Japan's climate service. If confirmed, this new hottest January marks 9 straight months in a row that have set new record monthly highs. The oceans in January also set a new record, boosted by an exceptionally strong El Nino weather pattern, and that would potentially energize the Atlantic hurricane season later this year.
Potentially.
Both heat records increase the odds that 2024 will surpass 2023 as the hottest year ever recorded. That's due to global warming driven by humanity's burning of fossil fuels.
And the witch's curse.
A new study warns that the Mediterranean Sea is warming at a faster pace than predicted and is also getting more acidic faster than predicted. The oceans absorb a significant amount of humanity's carbon emissions. That causes ocean acidification, called the evil twin of global warming, because too much CO2 literally changes the ocean's chemistry, creating conditions that corrode the shells of marine animals and coral reefs.
So it's not the witches?
No, it's not the witches. It's humanity.
Oh.
This week, a new study proposes adding a Category 6 to the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale to better alert the public to mega storms. The scale currently tops out with an open-ended Category 5 for wind speeds over 157 miles per hour. But the researchers show that a number of tropical cyclones since 2013 had wind speeds faster than 192 miles per hour, meeting their criteria for a Category 6. The researchers warn the Gulf of Mexico is at the highest risk for potential Category 6 mega hurricanes. That's if global temperatures reach 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels.
I'm no climate scientist, but I do recall asking a few of them about 2 or 3 years ago, hey, is it time for a Category 6? Looks like we're going to get a Cat 6.
Maybe. But some good news for victims of disasters. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has a new policy. As areas rebuild after a disaster, FEMA will offer states and communities new funding to install solar panels, heat pumps, and other green upgrades as they repair public structures like schools and hospitals.
Cool. That's one of the things that the Republicans want to turn back as soon as they get into the White House, right?
Yep. And some positive news. The vast majority of Americans living in coastal communities support offshore wind farms. In a survey by Climate Nexus, more than 2/3 of respondents support expanding offshore wind farm construction in their own communities, including a majority of Republicans. That's despite a surge in disinformation campaigns attempting to falsely link whale deaths to offshore wind development that have been spread by right-wing media and organizations backed by the fossil fuel industry.
And Donald Trump.
Finally, great news for everything that breathes.
What?
For the first time in more than a decade, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency this week cracked down on one of the deadliest forms of air pollution, soot. Soot is tiny particles, primarily from the burning of fossil fuels, that can penetrate deep into the lungs and bloodstream, causing heart disease, lung cancer, strokes, dementia, and other chronic illnesses. The EPA says the tighter rules required by law will prevent up to 4,500 premature deaths every year. Industry leaders are expected to challenge the new clean air standards, alleging that they'll harm economic growth. But the EPA says the standards will save $46 billion in public health costs over 10 years.
That is good news. I'm just glad the historic rains are gone from California. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks, Mastodons, and sites still known as Twitter at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Mary had a little lamb. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From Radio Beacon to Radio Beacon.
change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Do you worry, though, if it's left up to the states, you basically get Trump taken off the ballot in blue states and staying on the ballot in red states?
That's what our federalist system, very well may lead to. I think it'd be better if he were just roundly defeated. But on the other hand, I also don't think it's wise to ignore the Constitution. So it's a really difficult problem that he has created for the courts and for states. You're in a dilemma. If you ignore the Constitution and basically say, we're not paying attention to it, or if you try to write it away and say it doesn't apply, even though I think most historians as well as legal experts say it does, you're also doing damage. So that's why I say maybe they'll come up with this approach. Look, the states run elections. It's going to be up to the states. I think a lot of states will be very reluctant to take him off the ballot because I think that would be a political firestorm in a lot of states. But on the other hand, some will.
I just wonder, I think about the 2016 election, right?
Yeah.
And we're more deeply divided than even then.
Yeah.
And I think about the 2020 election where, half the Republican Party, three-quarters of the Republican Party, depending on the polling, doesn't believe that Joe Biden won. What happens if you don't even have Donald Trump on the ballot and one part of a country elects Joe Biden, the other part of the country elects Donald Trump?
Well, but look at why we're in this mess. We're in this mess because we have a man who cares nothing about our Constitution, cares nothing about our country, cares nothing about real national security. All he cares about is himself. That's all he cares about. He cares about his own power, his own prestige, his own standing. And how do you say, wait a minute, this is not permitted within our system? As I said, I would be perfectly satisfied if we beat him both in the popular vote and in the Electoral College, as Joe Biden did so convincingly in 2020. But we also have laws, and that's what courts are for. They have to interpret those laws.
Yeah, and she's right about the conundrum, the complex mess that this man makes everywhere he goes. And it's not just Hillary Clinton, and it's not Democrats that are saying this. This entire case in Colorado was not brought by liberals. It was not brought by progressives. It was not brought by Democrats or independents. It was brought by Republicans who really believe that he violated the Constitution's ban on having an insurrectionist on the ballot. This was like a whole group of some of the most conservative lawyers, conservative judges, conservative members of the House of Representatives, conservative members of the state legislatures in various states. That's who brought this case. We didn't bring this case. And Donald Trump, because he doesn't give a damn about democracy, it's like a concept to him. It's like an experiment, maybe. Maybe it rises to the level of an experiment. I doubt it. But, his experiments are like, well, couldn't we put light inside the body? And you look at disinfectant, it kills it in a minute. Couldn't we somehow get that inside? Because, it does a number on the lungs. He doesn't have common sense, or what he has is self-preservation and narcissism. These are diseases of the mind. And he doesn't give a damn about Americans. He doesn't give a damn about the preservation of democracy. Democracy isn't a real thing to him. It's not some tangible thing like gold. You know what I mean? It just isn't. And everybody understands that, who wants to understand that. And, go find yourself another candidate. If you're looking for somebody who can lead the country in a direction that appeals to you, and you happen to be a white supremacist, go find somebody who's electable. Because this guy, he has made such a mess. Nikki Haley, I'm telling you now, the longer she stays in this race, the happier I am. even if she actually manages to become the Republican nominee, how we laugh. There's no way, because 30% of the Republican Party, the base of the Republican Party is that 30%. They're the ones who vote in primaries. And so she wouldn't stand a chance to become the Republican nominee over the insurrectionist. No way. But if she could, and if she did, that would be a challenge for Joe Biden. Just saying, because I'm honest. She could probably, go round for round with him. She could probably go toe-to-toe with him. She could probably, come within a few electoral college votes. I mean, it would come down to like an Arizona or a Florida, and we'd be waiting for a few days. But she doesn't stand a chance. And this is why, I'm getting such a kick out of listening to her talk about the crap that he's doing. I mean, she just came out yesterday and said, listen, we all know Nevada was rigged. I knew it was going to be rigged. That's why I didn't compete there. I didn't spend money there. I didn't go there. It wasn't anything I was really interested in doing because it was rigged. But look at this man. Everywhere he goes, things are rigged. Everywhere he goes, things are chaotic. Everywhere he goes, he's committing, and the Supreme Court was a perfect example of that today. Perfect example. The Supreme Court was dealt this case, and they don't want it. They don't want to get, now they could have refused to hear it. But then, of course, everybody would have criticized them for that too, because then the states would have been able to run willy-nilly anywhere, in any direction they wanted to, right? But listen to Nikki Haley, okay?
Does that situation in Nevada hurt a little bit?
No, I mean, Nevada, it's such a scam. They were supposed to have a primary. Trump rigged it so that the GOP chairman, who's been indicted, would go and create a caucus. We knew months ago that we weren't going to spend a day or a dollar in Nevada because it wasn't worth it. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't even count Nevada. That wasn't anything we were looking at. We knew that was rigged from the start. Sure. Our focus is on South Carolina, Michigan, Super Tuesday. So if you look what we did in Iowa and you look what we did in New Hampshire, we're continuing to grow. That's what matters, I think, more than anything else. But look at what happened this week. Mm. Here you have Republicans lost a major vote on the border. Mm-hmm. Republicans lost a major vote on Israel. Donald Trump was found that he will not have immunity in all of these court cases coming up. The RNC chair is fired. Mm-hmm. All of this chaos is happening around us, and Donald Trump's fingerprints are on every bit of it. We can't continue as the Republican Party to go forward with this chaos. You don't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos, and that's why we've got to see a change.
So she's very cute at the end there. There is no Democrat chaos. There just isn't. There was Democratic, can you say that? Democratic compromise on a border bill that we didn't love because it didn't have a path to citizenship for dreamers who've been waiting for decades now. Okay, it didn't have anything but border security in it. Okay, it wasn't dealing with any of the nebulous issues around should people be able to work and should people be able to come out of the shadows and should you be able to give the DACAs, the dreamers, what they earned by never ever even getting a parking ticket. None of that was in there, and the Democrats were willing to rise up to meet the road to at least deal with chaos at the border. Donald Trump called it in and said, don't you dare. And they just fell in line. And the mystery, why? Why are they so spineless? Why are they a bunch of ferrets? Why is the Republican Party a bunch of weasels? Why is Mitch McConnell telling them, okay, the mood's changed, we're not going to do border? What? I mean, like, what the hell? What are they afraid of? And there's something they're afraid of.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
The Bob Cesca Show. Bob Cesca.
For the first time in a long time, we have breaking news that occurs before the show. It's an amazing thing. I can't believe it.
I love when that happens, and good news at that.
You know what? All those bribes have been paying to the D.C. Circuit.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, I said, please hand down your ruling before we do the show. Thank you very much. Well, the D.C. Circuit has unanimously ruled that presidential immunity does not exist. No. But
this is a federal appeals court, this circuit court, and we've been waiting a little longer than we expected for this ruling. But this is the decision that the Supreme Court didn't want to make without it going through an appeals court first. Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, had asked the court, can I leapfrog the appeals court because this is so pressing? You may remember him saying he needed an immediate ruling on this from the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, they don't like to be told what to do, so they balked at that, and I don't think they wanted to or were ready to make the decision, so they kicked it back down to the appeals court where it would have gone anyway.
Yeah.
It took longer than it should have, but the ruling is down, and so now the question is, what happens now? Trump naturally will appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes.
Will they take the case? They've already kicked it out once, indicating to me they really didn't want to make this decision.
Yeah.
Or will they just not rule, which would leave the lower court ruling standing?
Well, the speculation for people like Allison Gill and Andrew Weissman and so forth was
Good people, yeah.
Yes, the D.C. Circuit would be so thorough in their ruling that the Supremes would look at it and go, you know what, they got it covered. So that's the idea, and that's my hope here, is that even though Donald Trump is absolutely going to appeal this to the Supreme Court level, that the Supremes will deny him that opportunity and say, well, no, we're going to let that decision stand.
Bob Cesca.
It's the Bob Cesca Show. New episodes every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everywhere you get your podcasts, and at bobcescashow.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day copper miners in Butte, Montana went out on strike. Mine owners announced a $1 a day wage cut when copper prices slumped in the financial markets. Swayed by the power of the Seattle General Strike then in progress, miners associated with the industrial workers of the world and the Metal Mine Workers Union Local 800 formed their own Soldiers, Sailors, and Workers Council. They issued a call for a general strike. For days, area trade unionists honored picket lines, left their jobs, and held meetings to debate joining a general strike. The streetcar workers shut down public transportation for 5 days. Soldiers returning from the war helped to man the picket lines. The labor paper Butte Daily Bulletin reported the post-war economy had left returning war heroes penniless and working in dangerous mines. While solidarity was unanimous among workers, their unions had yet to pass formal resolutions. Immediately, Montana's Governor Sam V. Stewart called in the 44th Infantry to crush the strike. Infantrymen bayoneted 9 strikers when they tried to stop the anti-labor Butte Daily Post from being distributed. Spirits were high by the end of the first week as official voting began. Then the streetcar men went back to work, citing no grievances with their employer. Then the engineers followed. Finally, the IBEW caved. They worried the engineers would take their jobs as they had done in the 1917 strike. The IWW and Local 800 called off the strike, fearing continuation would be fatal. Though most of the troops were soon withdrawn, one company stayed to ensure labor peace at the local water and electric works. Butte would remain under federal military occupation until the end of 1920. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I watched it on TV.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Are you ready for this? This is amazing, okay? This little clip right here is I don't know whether or not you're going to laugh your ass off or freak out. I don't know.
Just seeing those two faces makes me a little depressed just automatically.
Wait. So Nikki Haley just went through a partial list of all the chaos and losses that Donald Trump has incurred, and it's only Thursday. The week's not over, right? And one of the things that she brought up there was that that Donald Trump, he stood on a stage the other day, and I know a lot of people tune him out, but I don't. I can't. It's my job, okay? So he was on a stage the other day, and he was saying that he wanted a change changed at the RNC. He wasn't thrilled with Ronna McDaniel and the job she was doing, okay? Now, you know, Ronna McDaniel's name is Ronna Romney McDaniel. And yes, they're related. Okay. I don't even know why people make a big deal about that, but that is the case. Okay. Well, anyway, Ronna McDaniel, a relative of Mitt Romney's, actually has lost. And this isn't even the deal, okay, that he's upset about. She's lost every election that she's been the chairman of the Republican National Committee for. Okay. He won in 2016. He lost the midterm in 2018. Okay. Lost the House and the Senate. Then we had an election, a presidential one in 2020, lost that one. Then we had a midterm election in 2022. And that one was supposed to be, you know, a big red wave because, you know, the party of the president always loses and, you know, you always take it. And it was a split decision, right? The Senate went to the Democrats and the House has a two-seat majority, and they can't even pass border bills that they demanded, we tie to any money for Ukraine, any money for Israel, any money for the Indo-Pacific. I don't know. So the Democrats said, all right. They went about working on a immigration bill with a Democrat, a Republican, very conservative one, James Lankford from Oklahoma, and an independent, Kirsten Sinema, okay? They came up with a fabulous border security bill that actually has a prayer of doing border security. And they said no. Because Donald Trump doesn't want it solved, right? So now he gets out there and he says, you know, I'm not really thrilled with the job Ronna McDaniel is doing. And it's not because she keeps losing. No, it's because Donald Trump has pissed through $50 million that you people who support him anyway give him for his presidential campaign, and he's been spending your money on Christian Louboutins for Alina Habba. Yeah, he's been spending money on really bad, not sufficiently intelligent lawyers to get him out of really bad felony charges. None of that has worked with any of the, and he has paid so much money. So now he's turning to the Republican National Committee, and he actually is pissed because Ronna McDaniel said they're not going to pay his legal bills. And they only have $8 million left cash on hand, okay? I think Joe Biden's got like $100 million. I mean, you know, presidential elections in this, you know, free democracy of ours can run like $2 billion spent on advertising, okay? I mean, it's crazy. But that said, and I don't like it, and I think it needs to change, and I'm totally all about campaign finance reform, but this is not the scenario in which we're going to have a presidential election, or we are having a presidential election, as you know. But Ronna McDaniel has let the RNC go cash poor. There's like $8 million. What's that going to buy him? He's got all these felony charges, 91 of them, that he has to answer. So he got on the TV the other day and he said, somebody asked him, I forget which one of the flunkies that, you know, answered to him on the TV. I don't know if it was Hannity or Laura Ingraham or, you know, any of them, about Ronna McDaniel. And he goes, well, you know, there will be a change. There will be a change. And the next day, Ronna McDaniel's like, I will step aside. Okay, I'm going to leave. And then this happens on Bannon's show. Now, remember, Bannon is, you know, pretty much out on bond, okay, for contempt of Congress. Just won't answer questions, won't, you know, submit to a congressional subpoena. Just want you to know. All right, but watch this.
Would you step forward? Would you volunteer to take over the RNC if the president so asked you?
100% I would. Then I would have all the tools I need to secure these elections immediately. We've already got everything in place. We just need resources and their blessing behind us. Absolutely.
Let that sit with you for a brief moment. Just let it sit on your heart, as they say, for a brief moment. Okay, so these are two election deniers. Okay, one actually believes the election was stolen and the other one does not. Mike Lindell has gone absolutely broke to the point where Fox won't even take his advertising anymore. I don't know if it's because he can't pay his bills or they're just sick of his, contretemps because they got sued and adjudicated a damage, a return of damages, almost $1 billion. Almost $1 billion in damages awarded by a jury against Fox News for lying about Dominion. Okay? And Mike Lindell is one of those guys. And there they are, without a shred of shame or consciousness, okay, talking about, would you take over the RNC if Donald Trump asked you? Now, what's really disgusting is the person that Donald Trump is considering for real is also an election denier. I think his name is Walter. Yeah, he's an election denier. And that's who Donald Trump wants heading up the RNC's money, fundraising, taking in the money. It's very sick. It's very sad. I mean, it's unbelievable. And there are Republicans that are looking at this, like Tara Setmeyer, Rick Wilson. There's a ton of Republicans out there, okay? Michael Ludig, who is uber conservative. James Lankford, who went on the TV on the Senate floor yesterday and said to the American people, I didn't see it on the TV till we played it. So thank you, producers in Drive-By Media. He said that one of the commentators, very popular, had threatened him to destroy his life and that they've taken steps to do exactly that if he introduced a border bill. Because Trump wants the issue. And he said that on the Senate floor. I mean, it's unbelievable. Why are they answering to this man who lost them just about everything? Lost 3 elections in a row because midterms for them are everything, right? They're House members, they're senators, they're... Okay, he only had to run once every 4 years. He won one. I will agree he won 2016. But he lost 2020, and he's going to lose 24. So why? Well, I have a funny feeling that it has to do with the supporters. I have a sick feeling it has to do with the amount of, semi-automatic weapons that are owned by Trump supporters and their large capacity magazines. 75 people were arrested in D.C. for having stuff like that in D.C. on Capitol grounds. You hear very little about that. And then there's the death threats. Yeah.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed. Who said Speaker Johnson does what Trump wants and Trump does what Putin wants? Who said that?
Ricochet Rabbit.
No, David Frum. Doesn't that sum up everything?
David Frum looks like Ricochet Rabbit.
Don't try to save your wrong guess. It is gone. It is lost to us.
Okay.
I've run out of things to say about just what despicable traitors they are. And on top of it, what a hot mess they are as a party. Oh, my God.
Yep.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene is basically the ones telling Johnson, don't bring this to the floor. I'll vote to vacate you. Like Mitch McConnell lets Langford negotiate this for months, then throws him under the bus. Trump's getting ready to throw Ronna McDaniel under the bus for all his horrible mistakes.
Apparently,
but
Ronna
he's going to let her twist in the wind. I think I'll decide after South Carolina. Today. Yes.
She came down to Mar-a-Lago yesterday to speak with him.
Did they have
I don't
meeting?
Probably.
Ew, ow.
I wonder how fast she'll bring back the Romney once she leaves his clutches.
Snap-a-doodle. Yeah. Luke tweets, Trump is a traitor running a political party that's holding the U.S. government hostage in order to ransom another term by driving the nation into the gutter to confuse and panic deluded people who think installing a failed fascist is somehow the solution to America's problems. I mean, as everyone said, this is the toughest border bill ever. There's not even a path for dreamers.
I know.
All the stuff we would want, none of that's in there, and they're not going to do it.
Nope.
I mean, it's just, and they are going to hand Ukraine to Putin.
Yep.
I mean,
it's all the stuff that the Republicans came to the Democrats with tears in their eyes, wanting.
Sure.
Wanting. and now they don't.
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
President Trump will have a miracle second term.
He is the one that God's going to put his hands on.
God says, I'm going to flip this thing, and we haven't seen anything yet, but it's coming.
We're not crazy, they're crazy.
And justice will be served, says your God.
This is far from being over.
Nothing will stop me from my plan of putting my son, Donald Trump, back in that White House.
All of this is culminating in Donald Trump getting his second term of presidency. It has to.
I hear the sound of victory. I hear the sound of victory.
Make America great again.
That's what the Bible says.
That is spiritual warfare.
We'll take it by force.
This is war.
Let me tell you something. You ain't seen an insurrection yet.
This plotline could have come from one of Charles Dickens' novels about upper-class depravity. Miserly governors refused to provide gruel for poverty-stricken ragamuffins. Unfortunately, this is not a novel, but modern-day reality, taking place in 15 states where right-wing office holders have scorned a federal program to provide food this summer for millions of children mired in poverty. No, bark these political ideologues seeking to punish poverty. They piously demonize public aid, even for hungry children. This program hardly lavishes luxury dining on anyone, offering only $40 per child in groceries. Not for one meal or even a week, but $40 a month, about $1.30 a day. Feast on that. Yet the politicos in such deeply impoverished states as Mississippi.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The Colorado Supreme Court concluded that the violent attempts of the petitioner's supporters in this case to halt the count on January 6th qualified as an insurrection, as defined by Section 3, and I read your opening brief to accept that those events counted as an insurrection, but then your reply seemed to suggest that they were not. So what is your position as to that?
We never accepted or conceded in our opening brief that this was an insurrection. What we said in our opening brief was President Trump did not engage in any act that can plausibly be characterized as insurrection.
All right, so why would this not be an insurrection? What is your argument that it's not? Your reply brief says that it wasn't because I think you say it did not involve an organized attempt to overthrow the government. So
that's one of many reasons, but for an insurrection there needs to be an organized, concerted effort to overthrow the government of the United States through violence. And this
so the point is that a chaotic effort to overthrow the government is not an insurrection?
No, we didn't concede that it's an effort to overthrow the government either, Justice Jackson. Right? None of these criteria were met. This was a riot. It was not an insurrection. The events were shameful, criminal, violent, all of those things, but it did not qualify as insurrection as that term is used in Section 3.
Yeah, it kind of did because we do have a federal code that actually has a definition of insurrection in it. It's 18 U.S.C. Section 2383, and here is what it says, quote, whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid and comfort thereto, shall be, and then it talks about the punishment, convicted for 10 years, okay? So it doesn't have to be organized, okay? And you don't have to participate in it. You can give aid to somebody who did and still be an insurrection. I honestly... So he said, oh, no, in our brief, we said it had to be organized. Karen, so you have to be Henry Hill, right? You got to have things organized. First of all, this was organized. And we know it was organized because idiot boy Stuart Rhodes went on Alex Jones' show and said he'd already done recon ahead of January 6th and that they had put weapons on the other side of the Potomac waiting. They would be in waiting for Donald Trump to declare that there was a insurrection at the Capitol and invoke the Insurrection Act so that he could make the Oath Keepers the official militia of Washington, D.C. Now, Donald Trump still talks about taking over Washington, D.C. And for those of you who have checked out and don't listen to what he says, do so at your own peril. That's all I can tell you. But he did say that he would like to take over Washington, D.C. He wants to take it over. He wants to occupy it. He's telling you crime is off the hook, it's off the charts, and only he can fix it, and he's going to take Washington, D.C. and federalize it and use it as a federal territory and put the military there and, all this crap. And it's really freaking frightening because, first of all, just so you're current, crime, especially violent crime, is way down in this country. Way down. 2, the idea that he's not going to let go of being king of at least DC and then spreading that out to the burbs there and the exurbs there. No, I don't even know what. And that they've already had 4 years to figure out how to do it now. Should scare the bejesus out of you. Because this is what they imagine. This Project 2025 that, they have. It's like 1,000 pages of absolute fascism. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you it is, because that's what it is. We would have an autocrat. We would have a king. We would have, El Presidente. We would have, a Führer. We would have, I don't know what to call him anymore. The role that he envisions for himself. I don't know what you would say other than, it's him and him alone. And, he don't need no stinking laws. He don't need no Congress. He don't need no law enforcement. He's got the military. He's got the Oath Keepers. Because he'll pardon all of them, and make them essentially cabinet members, because he trusts them. He trusts them to betray this country in a way that you can't trust anybody else because they're already in jail for doing that. Just saying. And he's got his little helpers, too, in the media. You know where Tucker Carlson is, right? You know where he is? He's in Moscow in a high-rise luxury building. He has already, here we were trying to figure out if he was going to, but apparently he already has interviewed Vlad. Yes, Vlad the Impaler, Vladimir Putin, who invaded a European democracy known as Ukraine. And has killed children there, has raped women there, has turned, once proud farming towns. Think about you're like in, Iowa somewhere. You're growing corn in Kansas. Whatever your thing is, you're in Texas growing cotton, okay? And all of a sudden, you're invaded by your own neighbor because they want control of everything that you have. That's what's going on in Ukraine, okay? And Tucker Carlson has excused this behavior. He has said that Putin was right to do it. He has called Ukrainians Nazis. He has said that, a lot of the things that we see with our own eyes by virtue of wartime reporters who risk their own skin, their own life, like, what's her name? Clara. What's her name? The blonde one. She's amazing. And Keir Simmons and all these people that go to these far-flung places to bring you reporting, okay, and they put their lives on the line, that whatever they showed you about, maternity hospitals being bombed and, drunk Russian soldiers raping women in Bucha, like old women in Bucha and young women in Bucha, and, the siege at Mariupol and turning that proud town, that farming town, into ruins and rubble and just, that didn't happen. It didn't happen. Tucker is going to tell people who pay him that Vladimir Putin's a good guy. I'm not kidding. So He's already interviewed Vlad, and I have the intro, okay, to his interview. And of course, it begins with many, many, many lies. It's like, this is another garbage in, garbage out scenario, okay, where, Ted Cruz tells you a lie about how many people can be allowed to come into the country a day before the border is shut down. And of course, it turns out it's not 5,000 a day. It's 5,000 people not crossing, being encountered by Border Patrol, encountered at the border, not crossing, on average in a week, in a 7-day period. So then he attempts to do all this math to come up with a number of 9 million, whatever, garbage in, garbage out. This is that too.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
Do you think that the people who stormed the Capitol should be held responsible to the full extent of the law?
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages.
Can I speak to Pelosi? Yeah, we're coming. Oh, my kids, we're coming for you too.
We can take that place.
They've got the gallows stood outside this Capitol building. It's time to start using them.
There hasn't been a positive thing happen in this administration since it came about.
Now, Teddy Roosevelt had the square deal. FDR had the New Deal. Truman had the fair deal. What President Biden, Democrats, all of us have accomplished in the last few years is a big deal.
Results matter. Inflation now is down to 3.2%. Wages are up to 4.4%. The economy is booming, 5.2% GDP growth in the last quarter.
With a gallon of gas now at the lowest Thanksgiving price since 2020, prices for gasoline down 9 straight weeks.
By so many measures, the economy is in good shape. Unemployment near 50-year lows. Wages going up. The economy, it is growing. Inflation, it is slowing.
Because of the CHIPS and Science Act, one of the most significant economic plans since FDR. I'm proud of the work Biden and Harris have done.
President Biden and his team worked 24/7 with partners in the region to make sure that this release was possible. This is a president who is right now showing the American people what real leadership looks like.
It's amazing how many times in his career Joe Biden has been counted out, only to come back and prove the critics wrong.
I got rid of Roe v. Wade.
Well, should the woman be punished for having an abortion?
There has to be some form of punishment. We will root out the radical left thugs that live like vermin.
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Trump wrote on social media, if you go after me, I'm coming after you.
He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. I am your retribution.
For 4 long years, Donald Trump disgraced America, laughing with mass-murdering dictators, Vladimir Putin's puppet.
You know, the people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
The world laughed at us.
You know, Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart.
No more.
The people of this nation have spoken. At this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed.
Today, America once again leads the free world. A respected leader, steady, determined, who knows America is great because America is good.
We stand with Israel today, tomorrow, as we always have.
Under President Biden, Our friends are stronger, our enemies weaker.
This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of the United States of America.
A strong economy at home, a respected America abroad. President Joe Biden, an American president.
Whether you're listening to Leslie Marshall each Tuesday through Friday or Brad Bannon each Monday, you can hear them from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on the Progressive Voices Network. Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
The director of the United Steelworkers District 4, Dave Wasura. Unions give workers a voice in shaping their communities, and that includes increased civic engagement, more focused political power for working families. It's a win-win-win all around because you have, the wages. Obviously, you're improving the surrounding community because there's job creation. There are wages that are increased, not just at the union, but also the non-union facilities because they raise the bar. But then there's more civic engagement, and then there's more power among the community, with their elected officials or to change who their elected officials are to benefit them. And that all comes back to, again, the unions and the unions fighting for their workers. And it has that rippling effect, a positive rippling effect throughout the community with everyone.
Fatality. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, courtesy of the Washington Post, this is Tucker Carlson's intro.
The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Right.
These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth.
Okay, all that sounds totally correct. But this is what they do, okay? They start with a bit of truth and then they spin it into, hey, Vladimir Putin's the guy that's on your side.
Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers.
Hello.
And they do that mostly by omission.
Oh.
For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they have done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews.
No.
They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people.
Oh, my God.
At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin.
Okay. So it starts off with a bit of truth, a kernel of truth, a bright light for you to orient yourself with when it comes to describing what Vladimir Putin is doing to the world. Okay? Truly. He's changing trade routes. Well, Ukraine had to, innovate a way to get their grain out of Ukraine and to Africa and to other countries that depend on Ukrainian grain to make their food, to make bread. Okay, you know the deal. Now he twists that little bit of truth into a giant propaganda vehicle for him by telling you, by asserting a lie, that no Western journalist has bothered to interview Vladimir Putin. Well, I got news for you. The international news reporters in the world, the people like Christiane Amanpour, the people like Fareed Zakaria, the people like Clarissa Ward, the people like Keir Simmons, the people like, the BBC reporter who speaks fluent Russian, okay? The people that work at Radio Free Europe, the people who work, they've all put in thousands of requests to talk to Vlad. Thousands of requests. And he has said no because he won't answer the hard questions. Like, why did you invade a peaceful nation? Like, why did you bomb children when clearly on the top of the theater it said children? Why did you bomb maternity hospitals? Why do you allow your guys to go in there and rape women with impunity? You've been found guilty by The Hague of committing war crimes. When will you turn yourself in? Those are the kinds of questions. It's very interesting because Tucker Carlson has already been destroyed, his credibility destroyed by no less than Dmitry Peskov, Vladimir Putin's press secretary.
We received many requests for interviews with the president.
Oh.
There is no desire to communicate with such media outlets, and there is hardly any point in it. There is hardly any benefit from it. He has a position that differs from the others.
He, Carlson, has a position that differs from the others.
Right. Tucker Carlson has been praising Vladimir Putin, has been visiting with Viktor Orban, both of them autocrats, would probably just kiss Kim Jong. Didn't he go to on that trip to North Korea with Donald Trump? I mean, this man is so desperate to distinguish himself with the autocrats of the world. Just thinking, hey, then after I die, people will remember me, even if I was on the side of evil, even if I was on the side of the destruction of the American way of life, even if I was part of the destruction of the American dollar, even if I was part of the destruction of the American economy, even if I was part of the destruction of something we call Pax Americana, meaning that for the last 80 years, the alliances that America has built, the goodwill in the world of being a negotiator, an honest broker in difficult situations, giving all that up in favor of autocrats, in favor of theocracies, in favor of people with, only self-serving interests, at least he will be remembered. And I really think that's what motivates him, that at least he will be remembered. Because he's been booted off every single network he's ever worked on. Every single one of them. He worked on MSNBC, he got thrown off. He worked on CNN, on Crossfire, he got thrown off. He worked on Fox, he got thrown off. I mean, there is no place that will host him anymore except for, Elon Musk, okay? And Tucker says, oh, well, that's because they're not for free speech. And I am. And that's why you go to a country where there is no free speech, where people who dare to challenge Vladimir Putin in any arena, whether it's electoral or a debate or on television or whatever, end up in Siberian prisons, work camps. You do realize, Tucker, that a real reporter, a serious journalist who works for the Wall Street Journal is being held prisoner by Vladimir Putin. You know that, right, Evan? You going to do anything to release Gershnikov? What's his name? Gershkov? I can't say it. Gershkovich. That's it. Gershkovich. Evan Gershkovich. He also has another guy whose name is difficult. Alsu Kermashiva. He works for Radio Free Europe. And Vladimir Putin had him arrested, and he's in one of his, Siberian prisons, too. We all know Navalny is in prison because the documentary on Navalny challenging Vladimir Putin in an electoral scenario has landed him in a prison camp in Siberia, and that documentary that was made about him was an Emmy winner, it's an Oscar winner. So but. From the BBC to Radio Free Europe to CNN to you name it, everybody has put in a request. He's just, I don't know. I think this is just an odd duck who has this need to have a legacy, even if the legacy is, I was Hitler's best friend. You know what I mean? He just doesn't care. So here's the good news about all this. It's behind a paywall, and you have to pay Tucker to see it. So very few people are going to see it.
Yeah, I'll get lied to for free. Whatever. I'm not going to pay for it.
I mean, to pay for being abused. I get that that's I get that's a niche. I was born at night, but not last night, okay? I'm not like a sweet little country mouse. Let's not pretend we don't know what we're talking about here. But the people that would pay to be abused with his lies, it's a very niche people. It's a very, specific group. And it ain't me. And it's not Brett. All right, Dean in L.A.
That's why I actually prefer to change his initials around and call him Tucker Carlson. But none of those qualities you mentioned are anything that a fascist wants. So that's why Putin is willing to have him as, okay, I'll let you talk to me.
Right, of course.
But
of course, if you've ever seen any of the clips of Russian, state-run media, they have these two massive propagandists, a woman and a man, and they are legendary, legion in their lying to the Russian people. And they have been praising Tucker Carlson since the invasion, right? Because Tucker Carlson's been praising them.
It's great. It's great publicity on their side. Look, here we have Western side actually supports what Putin do.
Right.
So I know it's. Hey, regarding one thing I wanted to mention about, of course, the hearing today on the Supreme Court. My curiosity, if they want to punt on this and find an off-ramp, the Supreme Court, that's what they're doing.
Right.
My one issue, though, I have is, okay, they want to send it and get a legislative remedy out of Congress. When is that legislative remedy supposed to happen?
It won't.
Does the president have to actually be sworn in before he has?
It will not happen. It will. Listen, you need a 2/3 vote to remove the stain of being an insurrectionist. You can't get Congress to vote in a majority for border security that they consider a threat to national security that they asked for. So never is the answer. It's a great punt.
Clear for takeoff.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WACK, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WACK, more than 3,000 people died of drug overdoses in Los Angeles County alone in 2022. And last October, Hollywood actor Matthew Perry of Friends fame became one of the latest overdose victims when he accidentally died of acute effects of ketamine at his Los Angeles home. Perry's story reminds us that no one is immune to drug overdoses. But who is most vulnerable in LA County, and what can be done about it? To find out, we spoke to Nyabingi Kuti, director of the LA Harm Reduction Network, which aims to expand and enhance access to substance use disorder treatment for LA County and especially Skid Row. So you've said in the past that Black residents on Skid Row are facing a humanitarian crisis related to substance use disorder. What are you seeing and hearing from these residents?
Well, what I'm hearing is a lack of residential beds there and the issue of quality of treatment that I mentioned. Many people that have died from overdoses have been in treatment multiple times. You know, if you listen to people like Perry and other celebrities that have overdosed and died, they've been in treatment before. And sometimes over 10 times. So that makes you wonder, well, why isn't treatment working?
Get the full Code WACK story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WACK wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
The science is clear.
Soot pollution is one of the most dangerous forms of air pollution.
EPA cracks down on deadly type of air